Sup gamers, and welcome back to another episode of Blake is Trash at Fighting Games, where I try not to be so ass at fighting games that I love. And today we're talking about my first ever experience with an anime fighting game. We're talking about Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash. And wow, was it just like a terrible experience or what? If you've done any searching for Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash on the internet, you've probably seen some pretty negative reviews, especially if you've done any searching here on YouTube about it. And there's just not a whole lot that's been positively said about the game. But I want to take an opportunity and use this video to explore a little bit of, yes, what was bad about the game, but I also want to talk about some of the things that I saw that were positive. But really, I want to talk about how much potential there was for this particular IP from my perspective, and why that the execution here is so bad when there was so much you could have done with this game. But before we dive into all of this, let's rewind in time before I saw the trailer for JJK Cursed Clash, or like I even knew the game was going to be a thing. So this is around the time when MK1 has dropped, and I've just finished watching season 1 of JJK for the first time. I'm absolutely enamored, in love. I'm like reading the manga from the start. It's amazing. And I remember going on Twitter or X or whatever we want to call it today and posting about like, I really wish there was a fighting game for Jujutsu Kaisen. And at that time, because of like all the hype around MK1 and how awesome like the entire production was in the very beginning, and just really started to fall back in love with fighting games for the first time since '98, I just really thought that there could be a cool way to execute a Jujutsu Kaisen style fighting game. And then I swear the next time I opened up YouTube, I saw the trailer for Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash, and it was terrible. It like had shattered exactly my expectations. And I knew it wasn't going to be a good game, or at least it wasn't going to be a game for me because of the ideas that were floating around in my head based on NetherRealm's release of MK1, my lack of experience playing any anime games or arena fighters, but of course I still ended up buying it because I love JJK. But let's flash forward then to the release of the game. Holy did every content creator that I follow like absolutely on this game, or say in their Twitch streams I'm not touching it because it looks so bad. They weren't all that wrong. What I had really hoped for is that I was gonna hop in the game the other day and just really be surprised by what I experienced. Okay, now I understand some people's comments. Because a lot of what I saw was like only ranked play, and I assumed like, oh, well, maybe the story's dope. You know, ranked play is just not where people wanted it to be because there's other, you know, anime arena fighters out there that are really good. And I have to say, after playing it, like even in the story mode, this may have really just turned me off of like anime IP adaptations into fighting or video games. But hey, let's talk about the game, its positive aspects, because believe it or not, there are some. We'll talk about the various modes that are in the game and kind of where they fall a little bit short. And then I'm just going to give a breakdown of really where in a perfect world, ideal dream world, this game could have gone. So let's kick things off. The music was dope. How can you be mad at it when it's got the music? Oh, they did a really great job of using music the same way that the anime does, and really creating a lot of emotion and tension through music, through using a variety of different styles, everything from jazz to like harder metal to everything in between. They did a really great job creating the soundscape and adapting a lot of the sound design that you see in the anime into the game itself, which was a plus for me. I'm a big music nerd, so that really made the experience positive in a lot of ways. Now, the character designs. This is something that I was initially disappointed in when I saw the trailer, but I've kind of reframed the way that I think about anime games, because I had an expectation, or rather a desire, for something a little bit more realistic, something a little more along the lines of maybe like a Street Fighter 6 adaptation of these anime characters in terms of character models. But I think what JJK Cursed Clash has done is a lot closer to what you would expect in a lot of anime fighters. So I think maybe my expectations were just way out of the realm of what this particular genre and its audience actually wants to see. So overall, I do think that the character models, they end up matching the anime really well. The moves, the execution, the movement, the animations, like they feel very much like an anime, which that's what this game is centered around. Making it feel like you're actually watching and playing an anime character from Jujutsu Kaisen, I think that's a major plus of this game for sure. Also, while we're talking about characters, in terms of a roster, this was great. Like, they gave you a really stacked roster to start with, and it is nice because it gives you an entire season 2 to drop in new characters that become more prolific as the show goes on. And so there was a lot of potential for, one, you to have a really nice starting roster where you can get used to a lot of different characters and have a lot of playability of the game. And then when DLC drops, you've got like a whole slew of new characters coming out and all that kind of stuff. So character characters overall, both in model design and in roster, I thought those were really sick. Lastly, it's the last good thing. It might be the best thing about the whole game. The shop has one item, and it is the only item / outfit that you need. It is Mojito in the schoolgirl outfit. Thank me later. Okay, so that wraps up my pretty short list of positives that I found from the game from my own perspective. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to hit on the various game modes, my perspective on them, and basically where they fell short. So I'm going to go through the story mode, I'm going to talk through ranked, and lastly, I'm going to talk about free battle, because that's where I was hoping there was a completely fresh take on how to play fighting games that wasn't there. Turns out it's not anything like I had expected. But I'm basically going to wrap up the video talking about where I think that could have been taken and the value it may have brought to the space. So let's kick things off with the story. The game follows the story mode as you would expect it to, just like in the show. It actually feels very much like a carbon copy of the show as you go through it. Keep in mind, I only went through the first 2 chapters because I just got absolutely obliterated bored after those 2 chapters. But it is the same story as season 1. It lets you progress as various different characters, which I thought was a great thing to do. It lets you play as a solo character, it lets you play as a dual set of characters, and really kind of experience the show as if you're playing through it, you know, exercising curses, going through iconic moments from season 1, all that kind of good stuff. But ultimately, they did this weird thing where they gave you a pretty dope cutscene in the very beginning that felt like a great video game adaptation of Jujutsu Kaisen the show. But then all of a sudden we go into this weird place that it feels like we're going through a PowerPoint presentation of the show instead of like seeing more and more actual cutscenes. And it continues on doing that for the majority of at least what I experienced in chapters 1 and 2, which again, and I think the overall theme here that I want to talk about is like, there was a lot of cool concepts in this game, like following entire season 1, letting you play as multiple characters depending on where you are in season 1, having a good example of a video game adaptation of an anime cutscene. But really what happens is the execution just falls really, really short, and it turns into basically the equivalent of a PowerPoint on how to let paint dry. It just sucks. And this is my opinion of what I would have rather have seen if they were going to have to go this route of only showing like simple images and text. Why not try and just take the manga and animate it a little bit, add some color in various places, and use that instead of trying to emulate the show so much in a very what feels PowerPoint style of presentation. Like, I think there could have been a lot more that you could have done bringing in the manga itself and using some of the stills that way that would have given this a little bit more of an edge and a little bit of a more interesting take than what we got here. So the story is not awesome, but I can get past that. Really, the controls just don't feel that satisfying. A lot of like the gameplay is focused around spamming a specific set of buttons that help you like gain your curse meter, and then you can use the curse techniques, which is dope. I think a lot of the animations, a lot of the way that the curse techniques interact with your opponents are amazing, and they were really well done. But what I think ends up being kind of trash is the fights that should be super hard, like, you know, Megami fighting Sukuna for the first time. They're really easy, and you end up just like, you know, spamming a character into a wall and nothing really happens in the game and the fight's over. Sometimes you can even, you know, finish a fight without having to get your curse meter up or ever using a curse technique. So overall, the 2 chapters in the story that I played just were not enough to keep my attention. So I kind of swapped into ranked just so I could play more characters and get a sense of what ranked was like, what the arena battler felt like for the first time, because I'd never played one. Ranked in versus mode was fine, but that's as much as I can really say about it. Ultimately, the basics and needs were there, right? So you had great roster of characters, lots of potential for the DLC. You had a great set of stages, which were all iconic and recognizable from the show and the manga itself. Ranked versus really fell apart for me was the gameplay itself. It felt like this entire set of controls and how things are mapped, like it felt like it was meant for a single player story mode game where you just kind of like, you go through, you have fun playing the story, smash a couple of like buttons continuously, you can, you know, use your triggers to activate curse techniques, but it didn't feel like it was meant for the complexities of like playing ranked mode or fighting each other. There was just something about it that felt like it was lackluster in terms of the things I could do, besides like smashing the face buttons and then releasing a curse technique. And so because of that, the ranked play didn't feel as engaging as like a fighting game feels to me. And the other thing that felt a little bit off in some ways is the dashing around the large areas of the map. These maps are pretty big, they're pretty expansive, they have verticality, and it's hard to dash around them quickly, go find your opponent and all that kind of stuff. So that became something that was a little bit frustrating. The gameplay itself didn't feel super crispy or not really exciting, even in versus mode. And it felt like sometimes traversing the map was more what you were doing than actually getting in and fighting. Now, one thing I want to be clear about, and I want to in some ways try to present some like objective things here as well, is that this is my first anime arena fighter. So I have no good perspective to go off walking into this. This could be how these games are made and how they're meant to be played, how they're meant to feel, and how the interactions and the gameplay and the controls that you have, that maybe they're supposed to be simplified and they're not supposed to feel complex like a regular fighter. I have no idea. I have nothing to base this off of except for my experience playing fighters. So there could be a lot of like baseless assumptions that I have, which is totally fine. This still does impact my experience and perception of the anime fighter arena battler genre, and also taking an IP that I really love and, you know, not really executing on it. So I do want to point out one positive that came out of playing ranked mode that I didn't really see as much or feel as positive about in story mode, and that is the use of the curse techniques. The animations were dope. The stuff you got to see like come to life in a video game that like I've seen in the anime and read in the manga, it was just great. It was really good execution from my perspective. Megami is one of my favorite characters, and the fact that a lot of my moves released a bunch of my Shinigami without me having to use cursed energy to get like one Shinigami out, I thought that was amazing. And so that was a lot of fun, seeing some of this stuff come to life that you see in the game itself. The other thing that I want to point out is that I thought Maki and Panda played amazingly. They felt really, really good. And for those characters, I felt like when I was hitting buttons, I was doing something. Their attacks felt like they had some power. They felt like you were really doing something. Panda was the one that I won the most with and had probably the most fun with. And those two characters really made the interactions between players and ranked a lot more fun for me. So honestly, that kind of wraps up a lot of my like real thoughts on the game. This last part is going to be where I thought the game could have gone, and just like some speculative bullshit. I appreciate you if you're along for the ride, and this is one of those things that I just felt like was necessary to honestly get off my chest and get out of my brain. So the last mode I want to talk about is free battle mode. Now, as far as I understand, this is really like a bot mode where you can hop in and, you know, practice a little bit more of your curse techniques, hone in your gameplay, you know, bring in other people, and, you know, do almost like a training or practice mode, which is fine. I think that's cool to have in a game. I really appreciate it in fighting games, having these practice modes that are very advanced. I think it's awesome. For this game, it just wasn't what I was expecting. And here's what I was hoping for. This particular game, because of its story, its characters, the whole concept inside of the universe, I really thought this particular IP could lend itself to being the better version of the battle royale that we got for My Hero Academy with My Hero Academy Rumble. Because I do think that that game had potential to go somewhere. It just kind of fell short with its initial technical bugs, but I could honestly really see Jujutsu Kaisen, its universe, its characters, the concepts within the anime itself, really lending itself to being a BR and leveraging the concepts like you see in popular FPS titles like Call of Duty or Apex. I think there was a real opportunity here to allow people to pick their character of choice, be able to drop into a map with various POIs that are recognizable from the anime, such as Jujutsu High School, and just have their character wander around the map in a PvP type of scenario, trying to get stronger. Now, to take this one step further, incorporating elements of the story concept and bringing in now a PvP and PvE mode where it has that battle royale feel, but there are elements of the environment that you can experience as missions, just like a Jujutsu sorcerer would have been absolutely epic. Where these ideas are stemming from is the upcoming release of Off the Grid from the first-person shooter world, where they take and tie together these PvP elements we see in battle royales, but also bring in PvE elements where you're interacting with the environment to complete missions, level up your character, and those types of things. And I think here in a Jujutsu Kaisen game, in that universe, you could be doing something very similar. You could take on, you know, various sorcerer missions to go and exercise curses so that you can level up. You could travel around the entire map and pick up cursed items. Maybe there's a, you know, low percentage drop of Sukuna's finger somewhere where you could then be both, you know, progressing maybe your character through a PvE story along with, you know, having the option to fight PvP battles with that stakes that a BR brings of you being knocked out and you winning the match at the very end if you're the last person standing. Again, this is my strange interpretation of what I wish this game could have become, is because I think there is really something here where we can leverage a lot of different game modes to bring to anime fighters like this, to kind of bring a different user base into them, but also expand what you can do with one fighting game, giving people the 1v1 versus, giving people the arena battle, and trying something and expanding it into like a battle royale for fighting games that progresses along the way the story does. Is this very ambitious and kind of way out of the realm of what a video game company would be able to do with the amount of money that something was backing this particular project with? Absolutely. But when I saw the free battle mode, that was what I was hoping for. And that's really what sparked this video. Is I think there was a lot of potential for Jujutsu Kaisen Curse Clash. For lack of a better way of putting it, I just feel like it ended up being much more of a money grab than anything else, without a whole lot of love and attention put into what the game could have been. But I think I've rambled on long enough. This is going to be a super long video as it is, but thank you as always for watching. And remember, the only way to move forward is to never quit, except for anime games. I'm never playing an anime game again until tomorrow.